Alright, okay, good afternoon, or I would say good evening. Okay, we'll get started for today's session over here, yeah? Okay, good. Okay, so as usual, what we're gonna do is to run through the market, update you in terms of some opportunities to keep an eye on. Okay, and then we'll see if you guys have any questions. We'll take a couple of questions and then we'll do a quick wrap up and of course update you of some of the upcoming events as well. Good. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look at the week. Okay, so for this week here, you can see 1st of September, basically the first Friday of the month. That's where we're gonna have our NFP, right? Okay, so the consensus as of now is that the U.S. economy seems to be quite resilient. Okay, and with the latest CPI data actually picking up a little bit from 3.0, it increased to 3.3. Right now, the expectation is that the Fed may actually do one more hike by the end of the year, right? Somewhere between October, November, we may see another rate hike. And some bank analysts actually also anticipate that after this rate hike, there's a very good possibility that we'll see a very aggressive cut if the US actually then start to experience kind of a recession, right? Or potential recession, the fear of it. So this Friday's data would give us a little bit of a clue, especially in terms of the labor data, in terms of NFP as well as unemployment rate. Right now, we're expecting it to maintain, okay, around 3.5 for the unemployment rate. Of course, if the unemployment rate starts to show an increment in this, that's actually showing us a little bit of a sign of a drop, right, in terms of the economic performance moving forward. Right, so this is to me, I don't think it's gonna be like, unless we get a huge surprise element, I don't think the NFP for this week is gonna be too major, right? So if you don't get any surprise, I think what would likely be is we just continue gonna see a muted event and not much is gonna probably happen, right? Now, other than that, we don't really have much very important data, right? So you can see a lot of rates in terms of Forex Factory, but all this data here is not as significant. Okay, so I think this week, other than NFP, there's not much of a news that you need to be overly concerned with. Okay, good. So with that said, let's take a look at the charts. Okay, now my point of view in terms of the dollar over here is that we're likely going to see a little bit more upside for the US dollar. But we're likely seeing the end of the entire push very soon. Okay. Now it's a little bit difficult to kind of anticipate where wave 5 would end. Most of the time I don't really like to trade when we're in a fifth wave development. Because the range of where fifth wave can end is actually quite wide. Okay. And I just don't like to be trading when we are anticipating, the end of a potential trend anyway, right? So while we are remaining bullish, I think, if you have any buy trade on the dollar, especially on the dollar index, it's going to be short term, okay? Which means you spot an opportunity to get involved in the buy. You enter a buy, the price move in your favor. You want to be quite aggressive in managing it, shift your stop to break even, and then start taking partial profits as it goes in your favor. The idea over here is if this just keeps continuing to do something like that, right, which is slow to the upside, then again, you'll be buying it, you'll be seeing some profits, but you want to be very, very aggressive in managing it because at some point in time, this can come down quite fast as a deep retracement. Okay, so this week, we're still generally bullish, okay, but the expectation here is we are not likely going to be bullish for long. And maybe by next week, we may shift our bias towards starting to look for a reversal in the dollar itself. Okay. Now we did get a pretty significant rally without any significant pullback. Okay, and most of the time that would happen, the pullback will happen. Okay, so that's the take on the dollar index. Now if you look at euro, then of course it's quite similar. Now euro over here, we are also expecting a little bit more downside, but once it tagged around 1.07, That's where again, we are expecting a deeper pullback after that, right? So this can move down without much of a significant pullback. Okay, so around 1.7 would be a key bounce, key area for a potential bounce to the upside. Okay, so of course this week, short term, any kind of corrective pullback, still look for sell. The target is at 1.07. Okay, so quite clear. Just you may want to go down to a lower time frame to really spot for clearer pattern and opportunities. Right. So the idea here is if we can get, of course, a little bit of a move down, a little bit more back up, that would then give us. Okay, let me just edit this. Okay, so that will give us a very nice little three-wave structure within the hourly, right? So we can see this as a 1, 2, 3, and of course impulse correction. Then you expect this to drop. Okay, so there are opportunities in the lower time frame. The sell side, of course, is gonna be this week itself only, right? Because after it taps 1.07, as I mentioned, we'll be starting to look for a reversal. Okay. GBP USD quite similar over here as well. Okay, so you can see here we are likely gonna start to form a corrective pattern. So give it a couple of days, going into NFP, that's where you can leverage on the potential catalyst on Friday. Okay, so from now until Friday, give the market some time to develop, and if it proves to us that it's developing as a correction, then we'll be looking for downside here, right? Okay, so target for GBP USD is somewhere around 1.2475. Same thing, correction, look for the sell. Okay. Aussie here as well. Okay, so last little drop potentially developing with 5. So same thing here, right? You get a corrective move, you expect this to drop a little bit more. Okay. So this major pass, basically we're expecting the dollar to strengthen, and we can leverage on the upcoming NFP as timing our entry as well. If we kind of get a surprise element, the dollar suddenly shift and strengthens, okay, then some of this major pairs will be very, very nice for a trade. Okay. Dollar CAD is the one that will probably not be bullish on the dollar. Okay, but dollar CAD here, I'm actually more keen to see if we can get a sell for the dollar perspective, or I would say maybe the CAD would strengthen. Okay. Now if you take a look at this pattern here, this is definitely very corrective in nature. Okay, and buying into this is not very, very high in terms of probability. So what I'll be more interested in is for price to actually drop and wait for a corrective move, right? The corrective move is important. Okay, you don't want to just sell into it when the market drops. Okay, case in point, right? Look at this, the market dropped, but there's no correction. The market dropped, but there's no correction. It just continued, right? So you want to wait for the drop plus the correction. Okay, you don't just see the drop and then you sell it. You wait for the correction, then you sell it. Okay, so this one here, probably not a trade within the week, unless you are going into lower time frame and you are looking at a little bit more aggressive entry technique. We do have a hourly impulse correction. Okay, can you take the breakout of this? Yes, but that will be a 1 hour chart, right? So of course, if you have experience, you are familiar with some of the kind of like techniques that we're using over here. Okay, you can definitely consider it hourly to look for the sell. But in terms of a larger time frame perspective on the H4, then you want to wait for the drop, wait for the pullback, and for this to develop on a 4-hour scale, likely it's going to be a next week thing. Okay, that's on the dollar Canadian. Dollar yen, very nice little move. Okay, so this kind of got us into a buy. Last week we talked about this potential 3-wave correction, impulse correction, so we expect this to go back and retest the top of the channel. We did get that, right? We get that impulsive push to the upside last week. So this week here, any form of corrective pullback on the lower time frame, for example in H1, if you can get a decent corrective pullback, okay, then we can look for a buy. Okay, so dollar yen as of now is definitely upside, right? Which can also align with the dollar strength. Okay. Now target here, we don't really have a fixed level, but what you can look out for is as the price approach the top of this channel. You can see over here this channel, right? As the price approach there, just be taking partial profits, and then if you're happy with it, you can even close the entire thing when it's reaching the top of the channel. So quite straightforward, right? The dollar pairs, generally we're looking at dollar strength. Okay, XAU USD gold, we are looking at upside, right? So this pattern again is very straightforward. Still remember when I told you, when we see something like that, don't sell it anymore. Okay, look for the wait for the bounce, right? Last 2 weeks we started to get this, and that's great. Okay, so again, what you can learn from this is whenever you see something like that, where the market is coming down but it's very slow, or if the market is going up but it's very slow, don't go and catch that direction anymore. Be patient, wait for the reversal sign. Okay, now case in point, look at the dollar. It's starting to do something like that, right? Going up very slow. So if this continue to do like this, don't buy anymore. Wait for the reversal. Focus on catching that reversal trade. Okay. So go over here. You got that first impulse. I'm looking at this as a potential 1, 2, 3. If it can come back down a little bit more, that would complete a very nice three-wave structure for upside. Okay. So go here this week. Look for upside. Okay. And of course, the condition, the criteria here is we need to see a correction. Okay, if this just drop off like that, obviously you don't want to be buying it. Okay, so give it time. This may build in quite nicely with NFP on Friday as well as a potential catalyst. Okay, so what you can do is go here. We are looking at a trade if the dollar weakens. The other major currency pairs, we are looking at a trade if the dollar actually strengthens. So if you're in a perfect kind of what we call ceteris paribus, right, which means that everything else remains constant and only the dollar itself is affecting price, then either of this is gonna be right, the other would be wrong. Okay, now we don't care whether the analysis itself is gonna be right or wrong, because if today we are expecting this to come down slow and we look for the buy, but instead of it coming down slow, it decides to drop, which means what? Dollar strengthen. This analysis is wrong. We won't get into it. It's perfectly fine. But what we'll be doing is we'll be focusing on maybe a pair like GBP USD. If the dollar is strong, we get a sell. We make money from this. We don't care about the gold trade. Okay, you can follow that thought process, yeah? So analysis, as we're doing it, we're just basically preparing what we want to see. If the market doesn't give us what we want, we will not pull the trigger, will not get involved in it. Okay? And during situation and scenarios where we have one chart telling us dollar strength, the other one is telling us dollar weakness, is perfectly fine. Okay? Because at some point in time, we're just gonna focus on one, we take that trade, we make money off that trade. The other one, we're not going to get involved in the situation. We look at it again, we reanalyze it. Okay, so that's the whole thought process, right? You don't need to overly complicate it and say that how come one we're looking at dollar strength, one we're looking at bearish weakness on dollar. Okay, but you also need to understand, okay, gold can also have its own catalyst to move, right? Which means that the dollar may be strong, but if gold is going to be stronger than the dollar, this can still go up. Okay, so don't only look into one perspective, but understand that there are many factors can affect the price of a particular asset. Okay, so just want to highlight on that, just in case some of you may be thinking, hey, how come the dollar currency wise we're looking at dollar strength, but then gold here we're looking at dollar weakness? Okay, so that's the explanation behind it. Okay, crude oil here is bouncing up a little bit. Okay, generally, I do have a sell trade, okay, at this point, but we have already shift stops to break even. So, looking at things here, we may potentially end up with a break even. Okay, but we'll see. I mean, anyway, like if the market from here starts to come back down, then that's great, right? But overall, we're looking at a potential bearish move. Okay, now what I can also update this to maybe relook if this decides to go a little bit more. what can potentially turn into is perhaps we have completed a small tree wave. Okay. Now, obviously, this is not impulsive, right? That move up is corrective, but what it can do is can do a deeper pullback. Now, if that's a deeper pullback, eventually we're still expecting this, because then this will be a 1, 2, 3 that completes the down move. This is a reset, and we're still expecting one more drop. Okay, unless we can't get a super impulse move and then it starts to form a correction here. Until we see this, okay, we're not going to be bullish yet, okay, because there's a good possibility this would just continue ding dong, and if that's the case, this is still corrective in nature. We are expecting another 3 wave down. Okay, yeah? So overall, we are right now still maintaining our bearish view, and we'll see. Okay, so of course, if you're not in any trade right now, then crude oil would probably be something you just wait. Okay. Okay, S&P over here, we're overall bearish as well, at least for the short term. Okay, potentially something like that. So just give it a little bit more time, right? You don't sell it now because this is just one move. Again, for us to be looking at the sell, we got our impulse, we got our first move. We still need to wait 2 moves, okay, to complete that 3, and then only we look for the sell. Okay, so just be patient, right? Now we have a directional bias, doesn't mean you just initiate the trade immediately. Okay, you still need to wait for the confirmation, or quote unquote confirmation, okay, or the pattern that we want. Okay, yeah, so that's on that. GBP USD over here, we may get a setup this week. This we may need to maybe consider a little bit on the lower time frame. Okay, so what you want to look out for on the lower scale is, on the 4 hour we have the 50 and 6.8, right? So on the lower time frame, what we want to see ideally is this continue to go up a little bit more, and it starts to form a crawl. Okay, so if it starts to form a crawl around the zone, great, we can trade the breakout to the downside on the hourly, or we can wait for the drop and then wait for a small hour impulse correction combination and then take the sell trade. Okay, so there are certain conditions we need to be looking out for, but I'm not too keen in buying it. I want to see if I can get a confirmation for a sell. Okay, so this is the key area to look for a potential confirmation for sell trade. Okay, so the area is around 185 to 185.50. Okay, so keep an eye on that. Euro pound over here, I think short term wise we may get a pullback. Okay, so we did get a push up, and then of course, after this impulsive push, we are starting to see that crawl. Very nice little rejection. So short term, I think that is a good possibility. We'll look for a downside, and then after which we'll look for another pushback, right? So to complete a 1, 2, 3 structure. Right? So again, Euro pound, if you're on a shorter term, okay, look at that, very nice. Okay, within this we have a 5-wave structure as well, which completes potentially what we call a leading diagonal. Okay, so this has been coming down, coming down. The first move up forms a crawl. From Elliott Wave perspective, this is a leading diagonal. We have internal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, perfect. We have our RSI divergence, perfect. Okay, so this kind of suggests that there's a very good possibility this will come down. Okay, potentially towards somewhere around this zone. Okay, and short term, you can look for the sell, and then after which, maybe around that zone, start to look back for the bounce to the upside. Okay, so we are bullish, but short term, you can look for a sell trade. Okay. Aussie yen here, we're looking at potentially a sell opportunity, but of course, given that price needs to respect the channel. Okay, so we are in this bearish channel. You can see where we're basically testing the top. We have the 618. We have an internal corrective structure here as well in white. You can see. So we're definitely expecting downside, right? So how you can look out for trade over here is wait for a breakout to the downside. I mean, if you're a bit more aggressive, you can look for entry at this price point, right? Your stop can place above it, okay? Or you wait for the break. the downside, right? So you can't have an internal low, right? So you can take a mini low here. Maybe you can pick this or pick this, and then you wait for the break. Okay. So ideally, you want to see an impulsive drop, break this white channel, and then does a small correction below it. That will give you the confirmation for more downside. Okay. So unless price breaks through the channel, that means unless it goes up impulsively and forms a correction here, we'll still look for down opportunity. Okay, so that's on Aussie Yen. I think Pound Australia is potentially a setup soon, but I don't think it's going to be within this week, because the pattern I'm looking at here is potentially this would form a crawl. It will start to go back up, and we want to see a nice little tree wave. Then only we look for the sell, right? So this would probably be a trade maybe like next week or even the following week, okay? Because it takes time for the market to develop into a pattern. So this one, unlikely we're going to get anything here. Okay. Okay, Bitcoin, basically nothing much, right? Just want to skip. Okay. Good. Let's take a look at some of the instruments and questions that you guys have, right? So I see one coming in from George, asking about Kiwi dollar, right? Now Kiwi dollar, the first thing that stands out very obvious, okay, is this is a crawl pattern, right? You don't want to be selling into it. You want to focus on the buy. Okay. The thing here is, if you are more aggressive, you can go to a lower time frame, okay, and spot out on the hourly scale. Okay, so hourly here we kind of have a setup that looks something like this. So this is a fast drop on the hourly. We get a pull up, we get a drop, we get a pull, and likely we're gonna get one more drop here. Okay, because a crawl pattern, a diagonal pattern, usually the internals we're gonna look at 5 move, right? So we kind of have a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then one more drop potentially down a little bit. Okay, so what you can look up for is not to catch the bottom. It's very, very difficult to catch the bottom. But what you want to look out for is after this drop and it starts to bounce up, okay, then you can look out for an opportunity to get involved for a break at this point, or you get a corrective move here. Same thing, you can look out for a trade to take it to the upside from there. Okay, so this is on the hourly scale. So if you take a look at the 4 hour, again, we get a crawl. That's a very good possibility. We can see a deeper pullback eventually, right? So that opens up a pretty significant upside that we can look to capitalize on. Now, suppose you're not going to ride it all the way here. Okay, you can ride it the first wave, and use another wave, another fits to kind of capture that somewhere around this zone. That will be also good, right? In terms of a short-term target, and then you have an extended target. All right. So that's on the Kiwi dollar, right? Potentially focusing on the upside over here. Okay. So great. So on YouTube side, I'm seeing some question, right? Red one is asking, what broker do I use? The broker I'm using right now over here is Zenfinix. Okay. It's a London, UK based broker. Again, if you'd like to find out a little bit more information about it, you can click on the link in the description below the video over here. Okay, it will kind of direct you over there. Okay. Moose is asking about Aussie Swiss franc. Okay, so Aussie Swiss franc. Aussie Swiss franc right now, you can see this pattern. Okay, pretty corrective in nature, I would say. So there is a good possibility we're gonna see one more drop. Okay, but again, I'm not too keen in really selling this unless you're short term. If you're swing trade, it's not really very attractive anymore, and you can take a look how the market has been falling a lot. Okay, so it may be starting to, with this here, it may starting to show a little bit of a sign where the buyers may be coming in. Okay, after this, we expect kind of like a deeper pullback. This may be an early sign of it starting, so we may still see a double bottom. and then maybe a first impulsive bounce to the upside, and then this will start to kick off, right? So short term, there's a good chance of this happening. You may want to capitalize on that short term sell, but once it tagged this previous low, I think that's where you just want to exit any sell you have and start to look for buy trade after that. Okay, so that's the take on Aussie Swiss franc. Okay, there's a spike in the China market today. Okay, so with that spike, we'll probably take fifth wave completed down here. That's a pullback, but then you can see it comes back down. So on the lower time frame, that's actually a V-shaped formation, right? It went up fast, it came down fast. Okay, so what we can look out for potentially, okay, based on this kind of pattern, okay, there's a good possibility we'll see one more drop. Okay, I'll take this away. Probably need to string this a little bit to give you that clarity of things. Okay, so what can happen over here is, let me pull in that. Okay, so what can potentially play out here is that we may have completed this 5. We did get a push up, but then instantly got rejected down. So this may be a first wave down, second wave up, and we may be starting to see a development of this move down here, and then we need a bounce. Okay, so I think if you're interested in like some of this China index, if you can see a corrective pattern here, that's actually an impulse correction move, right? While this is not a candle, it's a wick, but it's an impulsive move to the downside, because you can see from this top here to this low here, basically that's an impulse move. Then you can start to look for sell. Okay, so yep, China stocks potentially more downside. Okay. Hang Seng here, not the best, not the clearest. We get that pullback bounce. Yeah, but what I would do is I would take this entire move as still one wave, right? And therefore, you want to wait for a obvious 3-wave pullback first. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Then only you start to look for upside. Basically, give it time, right? So I think this one you probably need to wait out until maybe closer towards the end of the week. Okay. Okay, Nikkei. Basically, Nikkei is upside as well. Nothing much change. Okay, any corrective pullback, I think Nikkei is definitely upside. Okay. Australia market, yeah, nothing much since last week when we talked about it. So just be neutral on this, be patient until we get a clear pattern, right? Right now we don't have anything happening, basically bouncing around here. So I don't think it's a good idea to be trading the Aussie right now. Okay. Let's take a look at the FTSE. Yeah, FTSE didn't move much since last week as well, right? But basically wait for the corrective pullback. If we can get that, then we may get a bounce, because you can see we're basically testing the low, right? Triple bottom. Okay, so give it time. If you see a corrective pushback, then that's the upside. Cool. Yeah, so I hope that's clear. Good. Okay, so I hope today's session so far has been clear for you guys. Okay, we covered quite a bit. I think opportunities are definitely there. And then of course we're at NFP, right? So we can look to capitalize on that potential catalyst from NFP as well. Okay, yeah. Good. So with that said, let me take a look at my calendar. Okay, yeah, so we're going into the end of the month, right? So I think of course, right, next few days we'll be closing off the month of August. Now last session we did a sharing on we did a webinar, not on YouTube, right? We did a webinar on Zoom, okay, about PAM. So usually the PAM account we kind of do a account kind of like summary at the end of the month, at the beginning of the month, and then we'll open up a small window of period for new investors who are interested to join the EA part, right, through PAM, to come in. Okay, so just want to share if you're interested into using EA to help you trade, leveraging on the PAM feature. You may want to reach out to the Everything Trading team to assist you on this, to find out a little bit more information as well if you're very new. The reason is because this week, is the transition, right, from end of August to early September. If you miss this window of period where we transit from August to September and you would like to join, you basically have to wait all the way until October, right? Because we don't accept new kind of like joining in middle of the month. Okay, it's usually only at the end of the month and the beginning of the month. That's where we have like new investors coming in and so. Okay. Yeah, so for those of you who are interested to find out more, okay, because we are getting close towards the end of the month, do take action, in the next 1 or 2 days, so that you can set things up as well, because it takes time for you to also register. If you don't have an account, you need to register your own account. You need to get your account approved and verified. It takes time. Okay. So yeah, for those of you who are interested to really find out a little bit more about what I've just mentioned, okay, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a link for the WhatsApp in the description. If you're watching it on Zoom right now, right, the team has also put up the WhatsApp link. Okay. Good. Yeah, pound yen. We did talk about it already. Some of you are asking about CAD franc and Euro AUD, right? So let's take a quick look at the CAD franc. Okay. Okay. I would say CAD franc, probably you don't want to touch it. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna get a bottomish formation, but we haven't had that first sign of an impulse, right? You need to wait for this. You need to wait for correction to give you a confirmation that we will see upside from the triple bottom. I'm not interested in selling. I'm only interested to look for buy, but we don't have the confirmation yet, so you just wait. Okay, and unlikely you're gonna get the confirmation within the week. Okay, so CAD franc, you probably need to be a bit more patient. Maybe it's a trade for next week. Okay. Yeah, Euro AUD here is nice, right? So one of you actually pointed out Euro AUD, there's a potential sell. Yes, there is a potential sell, right? So on a 4-hour scale, if you're based on the 50 and 618, we probably would want to wait for another pushback up. But if you drop down to the hourly time frame, we may have completed a 3-wave push, right? And of course, it does not necessarily mean the market will always need to go to the 50 and 618. What can happen over here is that this can complete the pullback here, okay, on the hourly, and this can be the flag, and the market can start to drop from there on. Okay. Now there's no such thing as certainty in the market. I can't tell you exactly what's gonna happen. If I can, then we won't be trading, right? We'll basically just be pocketing profits every time. Okay. So we can only talk about in terms of probability, right? If you ask me, I'm a little bit more conservative in my approach whenever I look at trades. So I would naturally give it a little bit more time and see if we can get that 50 and 618 back up there, right? Which means I'll expect this to maybe come down a bit. If I can get another pushback up, this would be great. Okay. Because in terms of proportion, I also want to give it time to really develop, right? So usually the proportion of an impulse to correction is 2 times. You can see this is almost just 1 time. Then this would give me that 2x, right, in terms of time scale. Okay. So that's me, right? Because I'm a little bit more conservative when I look at trades. Of course, if you're looking at hourly, you're more, or even smaller time frame. Okay, I know one trader in our group actually took a sell. Okay, perfect. So what you do if you're more aggressive, you're more on the lower time frame, you shift stops to break even. It's a risk-free trade, right? If this goes here and it doesn't take off, it goes here and it starts to bounce, you trail your stop, you take out your profit, you look for entry again. If in the event it doesn't pull back and this is all it is and it starts to drop, perfect. Okay, you have it sell, keep it, trail your stop, manage your trade accordingly. Okay. Yeah, so that's what you want to do, right? Okay, right, just to show you over here. Can I show that? How do I do it? Oh, okay. Right, just very quick one, just to show you. Okay, this is one of the traders who managed to take the euro odd sell, right? He also joined the euro pound. Okay, but you can see the euro odd sell that he took. Okay, so pretty neat, right? Yeah, I'm not as aggressive, right? But again, every trader is different, so it's perfectly fine. I mean, if you know your style, you know your profile, and if you're a little bit more aggressive, then great. Okay, the technique applies. The principle is the same. Okay. Good. A dollar franc, I wouldn't be a dollar franc buy, right? If you're looking at dollar franc very short term buy, that is a valid trade, but you want to be very cautious on this. Okay, because it can be a really short term push, and this is a crawl. Okay, so you can look for short term buy, but you want to be aggressive in taking profits because this may start to reverse and come down first before that push, right? Because this here is a potential leading diagonal. Okay, something like that. So we do expect the deeper pullback to reset that diagonal and then the next move up. Okay, so any buy on the dollar franc is very short term. Good. Okay, so I think that's about it from today's session over here. I hope you guys actually learned something. Okay, so as I mentioned, for those of you interested to find out a bit more about PAM, if you did not miss out on, if you did miss out on the previous webinar, you can always also click on the link to the WhatsApp, okay, to find out a bit more information. The team will be able to assist you to give you the information that you need. And if you're ready, okay, that's where you go and prepare your account and then join in at the early transition into September. Okay, so good. That's all from me for today's session over here. Hope you guys actually learned something. And then of course we cover some opportunities to be focusing on for the week. Right. So all the best to your trading, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Yeah. See you guys. Bye bye.